I'll take it you survived week 9 in your NFL survivor pool, and you're on to week 10. Thanks for joining me. I am Statsational for the Sharp app, and this is Scratch and Surviving, the #1 show for survivor pools on the internet. Week 9, we had some chaos there. Big favorite, Green Bay, goes down at home to Carolina. For all of you, I really do not want to ever hear again, I don't take road teams. I don't take home teams. I have shown you guys the stats. The road teams are actually slightly better when they're a 7-point favorite. Between that 6 and 8 points, I can do it for any point spread we want, but kind of the sweet spot, 6 to 8 points. Road teams have actually won at a slightly higher rate because it's probably, now it's a little bit of a smaller sample, but some of that has to do with the fact that you guys all have a bias against road teams and home teams. Yes, we get it. Road teams do not win as often as home teams. That's baked into the spread. This is why we use the point spread to determine what the win probability is for each team every game, every week, right? So I can't stress that enough. I know some of you get sick of me saying it, but for those of you who are new, first of all, welcome. And if you are new, that's the first time you're going to hear me say it of many. Hopefully you'll be with me for the rest of the year, all the way to the end of your survivor pool. So we do lose the Green Bay Packers. And in my pool personally, now in DraftKings, I had one Ram, one Charger. I think we're about 200 people left in there for the $1 million. On the my local buddies pool, I had 3 entries left there and lost one with Green Bay. Now, I thought I'd be a little sneaky there, take Green Bay. You know, you're looking at Survivor Grid, and it's, of course, not always going to be perfectly accurate and certainly not going to be accurate totally to your pool, but it's a good guide. Looking at Survivor Grid, I was thinking we'd probably get 10 to 15% Green Bay. Turns out in my pool, we had closer to 25%, which if I knew we were getting 25%, I just would have held off on Green Bay because we do have some more opportunities for them later in the year. But, you know, there's a science and an art to this, and sometimes the art and the science don't necessarily match up. So I get that incorrect. And not only do I take a team that maybe I didn't feel, I didn't like the leverage on when the game started, then they go and lose. Which makes it worse. But the good part about that was when they do lose, at least about 25% of my pool was eliminated. We're down to 71 people there. So that is the one upside. I still have 2 entries left with a shot to win it. You got to still be in it, of course, to win it. And this week's going to be a little bit different. Now, I mentioned to some of you last week, let's talk about the strategy there and kind of what I was getting at with Green Bay. Now, I want to kind of get off. A lot of times, if we can get off the most popular pick, we want to do that. Do we always want to do that? Well, not necessarily, right? When we got a favorite that's such a large favorite and they are being taken, there's kind of a sweet spot in there, and it's going to be dependent week to week. But depending on how many people are taking that team and the probability in which they are going to win. So we have a 90% win probability team, which we had a couple of those last week. Then we don't mind more and more people on that team. As the win probability increases, we are willing to get on board with a more popular team. As the win probability decreases, right, then we are more apt to want to fade that team. And I'm bringing that up because this week we've kind of got that situation. And let's just jump into it. I don't want to get too kind of lost in the weeds here. Let's jump into what we've got for this week. Let's look at the spreadsheet first and see what we've got. All right, bringing up the spreadsheet. Again, for those of you new, this is just a spreadsheet that I made before we ever started doing these videos. Just kind of helps me as a guide in which, kind of helps me see where the market is and where I want to make my picks. A lot of you have asked about this spreadsheet. The reason I don't send it out is not because I don't want you guys to have it. There's just a lot of manual inputting that goes on with it. I really never designed this to be something that I would give out to the public. But because so many of you have asked for it, maybe by next season, I'm hoping to maybe put at least a website together, something very basic that you guys can look at this stuff. Maybe we'll kind of incorporate some AI as well, where you could ask it questions, and we'll see. I mean, I'll have to partake in this on the off season and see if I can program it to get you guys maybe to almost become where you can ask questions as if you were asking questions of me and have my brain put into the AI. Because quite frankly, that's really what AI is doing right now, is just kind of taking what everything that we know. It's not really thinking yet, although I'll get into that. It can think, but in the AIs, the LLMs that we're looking at, the chat GPTs, the Groks and all, they're really not thinking yet. They're just kind of taking information that we already have. And if you provide it with more information, it will use that information when you are prompting it to give you answers, hopefully based on that information. So we'll see if we can get something like that put out there for you guys. I think I would enjoy it. And I know from the comments, you guys would enjoy it as well. All right. So this spreadsheet, like I said, I just made it for myself, and I always show it to you guys here on the videos. With 0% weight, we've got two big favorites this week of 82%, just about the same here. Buffalo and Denver are the big favorites. Now, we mentioned a few weeks ago when Denver was a potential play, I was advising you guys, just make sure you've got either Buffalo or Denver available to you, or at least Buffalo available to you if you were going to take Denver for Week 10, because Week 10 was shaping up to be a really tough week. Now, again, this is you look forward too much and things change. Well, you got Jaden Daniels hurt, Washington not as good as they were perceived to be maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Now suddenly Detroit at Washington is an 80% chance to win. We really weren't factoring that to be. We figured maybe they'd be a 3-4 point favorite in that game, and now they're an 80% chance to win their game, right? Seattle at Arizona looked like it was going to be the third best game on this slate. Still pretty good, 74% chance to win, but Detroit now even better. Here's the one, Carolina. Nobody was thinking about taking Carolina. Now you look, the pick percentage, 31% over on Survivor Grid. No one was really considering Carolina as a play just a few weeks ago. So if you're looking out into the future, you wind up saving teams. Sometimes that just doesn't work out for you. Now, we still have the advantage. The two top teams here are Buffalo and Denver. If you have one of those teams, of course, you've got the two teams with the highest likelihood to win on this week. So let's take a look. Obviously, at 0%, the way my spreadsheet works is this is a future value weight. 0% means it does not care at all what the future value is. It's just going to look at what the highest win percentage teams are. If I shift this to 35%, all this does now is give a little bit more weight to future. And because Denver has less future value weight, the more negative this number is, the more future value, because what it's doing is just adding up what the potential spreads are going to be on every game for the rest of the season for that team. So the more negative, the more times they're going to be favorite, and by more. So you see you've got more future value here with Buffalo than you do Denver. Detroit, 79, almost 80% chance here to win their game. They've got a lot of future value as well. You see Carolina kind of creeping up here as the third option because they don't have any future value. So as we account for, or we don't take future value, or we do take future value into account more, we're going to see Carolina pop up. And like I said, that was not a team that we necessarily thought was going to be a very popular pick. And here they are right now on Survivor Grid as the most popular pick. I'm going to get into more on what I think about that in a moment. But if you're in a kind of moderately sized pool, I determine a moderate sized pool is one that should get to week 18, but potentially won't, right? So I'm in a pool now with 71 people left in that pool. There's a chance we won't make it to week 18, but in all likelihood, we will. Actually, in that pool, we've got double pick weeks coming up in week 12 and 13. So there's a good chance we won't make it to week 18, right? So I don't want to look too far out in the future for those type of pools. Now, if we bump this up to 75%, and you ask, John, why do you only do 75%? You were doing 100% just a few weeks ago. Well, we don't have as much future, right? We're already in week 10. We're at the halfway point of the season. We're beyond the halfway point of the season now. And the future value is not just how many people are left, but also how much future is there, right? Okay, if we have future weight at 75%, now we're looking at Carolina popping up as the number 2 team here. Why? Because they have very little future value. Let's jump on to let's look at the Survivor Grid here, and we'll see, because the spreadsheet doesn't tell it all. And I mentioned this to someone in the comments yesterday or last week. You guys leave the best comments. By the way, I do have to just thank you all for the comments. It is tough on any YouTube video to get really nice comments. But on a video where you are giving advice to people who are more than likely, as we've shown you mathematically, almost all of us are going to get knocked out. It's very difficult to win the pool. So inevitably, each week, I'm going to lose viewers, and something I said was going to put you guys on a team that's going to lose. I mean, that's just the way it is with these videos. And more often than not, even when you guys get knocked out, the messages are really, really nice. So I do appreciate that, and it does motivate me to keep doing these videos for you guys. But let's look at some of the teams here that are, if we sort this by win percentage, again, their win percentage here on Survivor Grid is going to be slightly off from mine. But we see Buffalo. Do we need Buffalo again? Now, Buffalo, I already determined they had a pretty good future value, a lot of future value, right? Why is that? Well, they're projected to be a double-digit 14-point favorite here in Week 14 against Cincinnati at home. I don't know if that's going to be 13.5. It might be a little bit less, but they definitely will be a very large favorite in that game. Just in the very near future, they're home against Tampa next week. Not a game that we're necessarily in love with, but they are going to be a decent favorite in that game. They get at Cleveland in Week 16, and of course, home for the Jets in Week 18. I've warned you guys already. Be careful projecting out to Week 18. We have no idea. Will Buffalo have a locked up playoff spot by then? You just don't know with these better teams if they're going to be locked into a playoff spot, and will they play their starters? Will they not? So I really don't want to take too much weight into Week 18. All right, but this shows you there are going to be multiple times here we can take Buffalo. Now, very few people, maybe 30% in your pool. It's going to be, obviously dependent on your pool. You can look it up. Not that many people have Buffalo left. Same thing with Denver, because we've had earlier opportunities to take both of these teams. So you really have to look at your pool. But more people are taking Denver. Why? Because less opportunity to take them in the future. They get Vegas here this week, right? About an 80% chance to win. We're not taking them at home against Kansas City, at Washington. I mean, yeah, we know Washington now, no Jaden Daniels. This may be bigger than a 3-point spread, but still, we've got other options in that week. Let's look at Week 13. This is a popular one. A lot of us have taken the Chargers and the Rams that we did last week, and we mentioned last week, if you're taking the Chargers, that means you're going to be taking the Rams in Week 13 more than likely, and then vice versa. So that's why I split mine, because if I do make it to Week 13, I'm going to basically flip those in Week 13 because I've used Baltimore already. A lot of you may have used Philly already, right? So keep that in mind here for Week 13. There's a chance that we probably won't need Denver at Washington. There's a good chance you won't need Denver at Washington. Then at Vegas, maybe in Week 14, potentially. That could potentially be a play. Buffalo, we talked about that. If you're still holding on to them, that would be certainly a great spot to be taking them against Cincinnati. Tampa hosting New Orleans, that looks like a really good play. A lot of you are going to have Tampa available to you. Detroit, we'll see. Some of you may take them this week. Some may take them in Week 12, which looks like a great week, home against the Giants. Green Bay's hosting Chicago. Green Bay has burned people all season long, I think 3 times now. If you lose on ties, they burned you in the Dallas game for some people. Certainly burned people last week, burned people against the Browns. So I know a lot of people will be apprehensive about looking ahead and penciling in Green Bay. But we're going to probably have to, if you're alive, you probably have not taken Green Bay yet, because they're a lot of their big weeks that you would have taken them, they lost. But we're going to have to take them here at some point. Is it against Minnesota at home? Obviously, everyone's going to be a little frightened about Minnesota. They just beat Detroit. I mean, no situation here looks great for Green Bay, but we'll get to Green Bay more next week when they're going to be a more likely pick. So you'll see you do have some options here. Do we necessarily need to take Denver in Week 14? Probably not. So I'm not getting too caught up in that. But that's their most likely week that you'd want to take them if you don't take them. But why would I want to take them at Vegas when I could take them at home against Vegas this week if I've got Denver? So if you've got Denver lined up, I think that's pretty strong play, even though we're getting quite a few people on there. But more than likely, you save Denver for this spot, right? Home against Jacksonville, not all that great. And they get the Chargers, like I said, Week 18. Who knows what's going to happen come Week 18? You've got Seattle here. Arizona. This was a game. This was what we figured would be the third best game. Arizona's certainly playing better. Murray is not going to be starting again. They're going to stay with Brissett, who has played well for them. If you don't take them this week and you have not taken them already, at Tennessee certainly looks like a much better spot. So if you've got Denver or Buffalo, maybe not Detroit, maybe you kind of want to hold off on Detroit because of this future value. But if you're going to take one of these teams here, and you don't have to take Seattle, and you have not yet, this week 12 kind of looks like a really good spot. Indianapolis, most people have taken by this point, so there's not going to be a lot of people. If you have not taken Indianapolis, this would be a great spot to take them. Why? Because nobody's on them. If you happen to get through, and I'm sure some of you have, without having picked Indianapolis when they were 2 or 3 times this year, a pretty good option. And as an example of a team that earlier in the year were in a great spot. We liked them because we figured, well, this is not going to be one of the better teams. They're in a good spot playing a weak team. I think maybe when they played Tennessee earlier this year. And then turns out they're a really good team. Now, I know they lost last week, but this is why you can't really know starting in week 1 exactly who are going to be the dominant teams. We didn't think Indianapolis at Atlanta would ever be a game that anyone would want to take, or home for Atlanta, but here we are. There's a potential. So you would get a lot of leverage on the field here if you've got Indianapolis left for this week at home against Atlanta. And you look, again, home against Houston. Yeah, this Houston team, by the way, I know I don't like to give you guys handicapping stuff. Their underlying metrics, if CJ Stroud is back, is far better than what their record shows. So just be careful with this Houston team. I do think they're going to win some games here. The injury last week to Stroud, I think, cost them that win against Denver. Home against San Francisco, I don't know, right? So there's not going to be a ton of opportunities home against Jacksonville for this Indianapolis game. This would be a good spot. We're not just always looking to fade the favorite team or the team that's being picked the most. That's not the option. Like some weeks we're okay getting on the most popular teams. Last week I took the Rams and the Chargers. A lot of weeks I'm taking the most popular teams. Think about it this way. And before I get into the math, let's talk about Carolina, a team that we just did not expect to be the number 1 pick team come week 10. And here we are, potentially in your pool, certainly in larger pools. If we get down to smaller pools, like I show you on my spreadsheet, in smaller pool, the Grandissimo, if you're following that over at Circa, which was a $100,000 buy-in, they are down to, I want to say, 11 people left in that pool. You're not going to get many Carolinas, right? Most people kind of mapped it out where they're going to take either Denver or Buffalo in that pool. You're not going to get, you may get one Carolina, right? 2 people got knocked out last week in that pool taking Green Bay. But for the most part, they stay very chalky because there's not many people left in the pool. Of course, the added pressure of that being a $100,000 entry, people don't take as much risk just naturally, even though they apparently had $100,000 to throw into that pool. And I'm glad I didn't get in it. We were contemplating, me and my business partner, getting in that pool this year, and we would have been out that week. Arizona blew it to Tennessee, so I'm kind of happy I did not get in that pool this year. But Carolina here, hosting New Orleans, hugely popular, 31%. Now, why? Well, this is easily the best spot you're going to have for Carolina the rest of the year. They're at Atlanta, at San Francisco, hosting the Rams, at New Orleans, host Tampa, host Seattle, at Tampa. None of these games look very enticing to want to take. You're going to be able to get away with taking Carolina if they should win and really feeling like you got a free square, right? So that's why so many people are on Carolina. But picking your spots on when you want to fade the most popular team is important. Now, why do we want to pick our spots? So let's just do quick math here. If you take your pool last week, if you had the Rams, right? So let's say 50% of the people in your pool, there was 100 people left. Let's say 50% took the Rams, and they were a 90% chance to win their game. That means they were a 10% chance to lose. Well, how many people are you expecting to lose? What is your expected loss? Right. So the formula here, it's very much like expected value. If you guys are unfamiliar with expected value, it's a very key number to figure out when you are sports betting. We want to know what our expected value is on a bet, and you'll compare your model, the probability of an event happening based on, let's say, your model, or like here at the Sharp app, we've got our own models, we've got our own projections, and you can calculate what the probability of that occurrence being based on the model, and then you take the probability that the market thinks something's going to happen, and you take the difference between those two. So if my model thinks something's going to happen 60% of the time, and the market is giving me even money, that means it's a 50-50 proposition. Well, I want to bet on that because I've got an edge here of 10%. If I do an expected value calculation, for every $100 I bet on that bet, assuming my model is correct, right, I'm expected to win 60% of the time on my $100. That's $60. I'm expected to lose 40% of the time on my $100 bet, right? And let's say they're perfectly even. I'm going to win 100 or I'm going to lose 100. So I'm going to lose 40% of the time $100. That's negative $40. My expected value is now $20. Every time I bet $100 on this bet, I'm expected to return $20. Now, on no one individual bet am I going to return the $20. That's an overtime number, right? I'm either going to win 60 or I'm either going to win 100 or lose 100. But over time, what we're saying is if I did this 1,000 times, I can multiply the 1,000 multiplied by that 20, and that's how much money I should make over time on this bet. All right, so that's expected value. In a similar way here, we're going to calculate what we think, based on the win percentage, and then how many people are left, or how many people are taking that, the pick percentage, if you will. We'll go back to Survivor Grid of that team. Now, if we go to last week, again, that example, let's say 50% of people were on the Rams with a 10% chance that they lose. And let's say you had 100 people left in the pool. And we don't even need an actual number. We could just use the 50%, right? But all we would do is multiply 50% by 10%. That gives you 5%. That means we're expected to lose 5 people with that over time on that pick. Now, we're not going to lose 5 people. We're either going to, all 50 are going to advance or all 50 are going to lose. But over time, we can expect 5 people to get knocked out if we simulated this thousands of times, right? Well, how about Carolina this week? Let's call it a 70% chance. They've got a 30% chance here to lose. And let's say 30% of your pool is on them. Well, what's the number there? Well, now we have an expectation of 9% people getting knocked out. So again, if we go back to 100 people in your pool, we could expect 9 people to be eliminated on Carolina. So where now you look at it, a lot of people just look at it where, well, 30% is less than 50%, but the probability of that team winning is so huge. So I much prefer fading a Carolina this week and taking another option if I can, because I've got a much better probability here of getting some leverage and knocking people out. As a matter of fact, it's sort of implied here on Survivor Grid. I don't know exactly what makes up their EV. I think it's proprietary, exactly what goes into their EV calculation. But you look, it's 0.85. The higher this number is, you can look at it as leverage. They look at it as EV. The lower the number is, the worse it is, the higher the better. And this is one of the worst EVs on the board. That doesn't mean Carolina's going to lose, but it should be intuitive where you've got a 30% of the field is on a team that has a 30% chance to lose. That's almost twice as good as what we have with the Rams. So you'd be more apt. What we kind of fall in the trap here, and I do it as well, is we just have this inclination that we want to always fade whatever the chalkiest, best, most popular pick team is going to be. Well, there's great opportunities to do that, and there's not so great opportunities to do that. Doing it with teams that have 90% chance to win, and you were only getting, even at 50%, or you had the Chargers last week that were maybe 25, 30% in your pool, those are not the ones that we want to fade as often as we do a team like Carolina here, which has a 70% chance to win and a 30% chance to lose. Let me bring up the thresholds here for you on my spreadsheet, and then we will wrap it up. But when we look at the threshold, sort of brings that into the picture as well. Just look at threshold here. What this is saying is if you had 30% of your pool on Carolina, you're justified in taking anyone with a 62% or better probability of winning. That's basically all of these teams here from Buffalo down to Chicago, right? But look at a team that's just about 30% to win in Denver. You would need to, in order to fade this team, you want at least a team that's 77% chance to win, which is only Detroit and Buffalo outside of Denver. Okay? Similar pick percentage, but because they have a much higher percentage chance of probability, chance to win their game, we're going to be less apt to fade them. So ideally, we want to get ourselves in this. This is a great situation, especially in a smaller pool, You're going to see in real small pools, you're not going to get as many people on Carolina, most likely. You're going to have to look at who's available left in the pool that you are participating in. But in pools that are maybe moderately sized, like mine here with 71 left, we're going to get a decent amount of people on Carolina. It's going to be, I will not be taking Carolina for that reason. Maybe it's not 30, maybe it's 20. We'll see. You get surprised. You just don't know exactly. But a lot of people have taken Buffalo and Denver. People are going to want to save Detroit. Seattle's been a popular pick. Indianapolis has been a popular pick. Lo and behold, people land themselves on Carolina. Is it going to work out? Who knows, right? But this is the situation. I've told some of you guys in the comments, we don't always necessarily want to fade that team that is going to be the highest picked. We'll look for a better opportunity to do that. And the best opportunities to do that are when we can pick a team that's actually a larger favorite than the team most people are taking. So that's kind of what I want to get across to you guys this week. And I think that goes over everything that I really wanted to go over. So we will end this one a little shorter than what we've done in the past, which is good for you and I think good for me. We'll get this one in under 30 minutes. Again, guys, much appreciated. I love the comments. You guys are amazing. I appreciate the kind words. Unfortunately, I know as we go, all of us are going to, not all of us, but most of us are going to lose because statistically it is really, really difficult to win. But ideally, we'll win. Some of you will, but hopefully most of you will learn a little something along the way. All right, guys, if you have not downloaded the Sharp app, sharp.app, use code SURVIVE. I'm Statsational for Scratching and Surviving. Good luck, and I hope to see you all next week.